In ancient Israel, the anointed high priest would have spent most of his days in the temple in Jerusalem performing temple service. Once anointed, he would serve his entire life and succeeded by another only after his death. Like any leader in any community, I can imagine that the death of the high priest was mourned by the majority of Yahweh's people. Strange as it may sound, there were a few that waited keenly on his death. Those were the asylum seekers. They were waiting on his death because only then were they to be released. The asylum seekers were restricted to one of 6 cities in ancient Israel. They took refuge in those cities because of one and one reason only. They accidentally killed a fellow citizen. Once inside the city walls, they could get a fair trial and have their innocence proven. Once proven innocent, they had to remain in that city until the death of the high priest, when they were allowed to return to their families and their land. If they had failed to reach these cities in time, or if they reached them but the judges had ruled against them, they faced death. The person responsible to kill them was called a redeemer. Asylum seekers were therefore not from other countries. They were Israelites themselves. They had left their farms, their families, and all their belongings in a hurry to reach the safety of those cities. The first thing about this arrangement is to understand that life is sacred. Life is from God. Only God can give life. Every living being has only one chance to serve God, and if you lose your life, you lose that opportunity. It is tragic. The second is that the Israelites depended on land for survival. Planting and harvesting was essential to sustain the life Yahweh had given them. They could not survive inside the city if not cultivating land outside. Yahweh ordained that the blood of innocent life rendered land unfruitful. If an innocent citizen loses his life, the land on which his blood was spilled would cease to sustain life. The only way to restore fertility was for someone to revenge the life of the innocent. Hence, he was called a redeemer. This historic arrangement was implemented to improve our understanding of 2 major events that had changed the course of history forever. The first was atonement by Yeshua about 2,000 years ago. Atonement equates to the city of refuge. Here is why. In this parable, land depicts us as humans. We were ultimately made of dust, so humans are often depicted as land in parables throughout the Bible. But we were responsible for our own death, and so we became unfruitful in God's kingdom. We became like barren land. When the real Redeemer came, instead of killing us, he came to save us. He created cities of refuge wherein we can stay until the day of judgment. Those cities equate to atonement. We are allowed to live in these cities until judgment day at the very end of time, which, by the way, I think most suspect to be pretty near. The problem is the Messiah had condemned sin in our flesh. Read Romans 8 verse 3, leaving us with a grim prospect. Judgment day will not be good. Fortunately, another major event took place that has the potential to give us our freedom back and the opportunity to leave the cities of refuge. That event was the outpouring of the Spirit of Yahweh. Since then, Yahweh had given us the opportunity to be recreated as spirits. For those who exhibit faith, there is hope. There is the opportunity to be born again. Once born again, he empowers us to become his children. Read John 1 verse 12. Now we can leave these cities freely, but on one condition. We need to leave our flesh behind and leave the cities as spirits. As long as we live freely as spirits, with our flesh dead on the cross, we are free to produce divine fruit. This is the judgment that the Apostle Peter wrote about. The judgment that we as believers face in the beginning, not the end. Read 1 Peter 5 verse 17. The ultimatum our Redeemer puts before us is, If you want to follow me, you have to die with me. So when we agree, he kills our flesh and passes our spirit over. He causes a Passover in every new believer. Those who were baptized in the death of their Redeemer walks out freely and are commissioned to produce divine fruit because the curse had been lifted. They had paid with their lives.